Number 8. Latoya Alcindor. In December of 2020, Canadian event promoter Latoya Alcindor arrived in Jamaica to pursue a business opportunity. The 43-year-old had reportedly been investing in making costumes for the Toronto Caribbean Festival, held each summer in the Canadian city. Alcindor had rented a room at an apartment in Runaway Bay, St. Anne, and started seeing a local man, whom the authorities have identified as taxi driver Rojan Theomar Hilton. The 32-year-old was last seen with Alcindor on January the 18th of 2021. 3 days later, she was found dead in her room with stab wounds to the upper body. Other occupants of the apartment called the authorities upon noticing what was described as an anomaly in her room. At around 4:30 a.m., members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force found Alcindor's lifeless body lying in a pool of blood. Hilton was arrested as the prime suspect in her murder, but the authorities have yet to reveal a motive. Number 7. Suspected serial killer. In recent years, based on estimates from the United Nations, Jamaica has had one of the highest murder rates in the world. In many cases, the murders are an extension of gang violence, but as reflected in an incident from late January of 2021, seemingly senseless killings may also occur. Over the weekend, in an area of Kingston spanning roughly 6 miles, 6 homeless men were brutally attacked. 2 were left in a critical state while 4 were hacked to death. All had sustained chopping strikes to the head, and 3 of the fatalities occurred on Sutton Street. It wasn't the first incident of its kind to have affected Kingston's homeless population. A similar pattern of killings had occurred only a few years prior, and the authorities have entertained the possibility that they could be dealing with a serial killer. The investigation is ongoing, and a person of interest, reported as a deportee, was detained, but no further information has been made available by local law enforcement. Number 6. Karen Cleary. In December of 2018, the body of a British Jamaican beautician was discovered buried in the garden of her dream home in Boscobel, St. Mary. 44-year-old Karen Cleary was overseeing the building of the house, which she planned to share with her partner of 13 years, Englishman Andy Kane. She had been missing since November the 25th, and 9 days later, the police found her body. It had been wrapped in tarpaulin and buried in a hole which was then covered with a layer of concrete and dirt. Cleary had been stabbed to death, and due to the grisly manner of her murder, Kane confirmed her identity based on a distinctive tattoo she had on her left breast. On November the 27th, the woman's disappearance had been reported by Sheldon Hewitt, also known as Troy, who worked as a caretaker and laborer at the house she was building. The police found inconsistencies in 32-year-old Hewitt's story, and he was ultimately charged with Cleary's murder. The incident prompted a response from the president of the Jamaica Association for the Resettlement of Returning Residents, who effectively urged Jamaicans overseas not to return home because they risked crimes being committed against them. Number 5. Theodore Walling. Since he was in his late teens, Detroit man Theodore Walling had been traveling to Jamaica, a country that he regarded as his place of refuge. In 2020, after retiring from his job as a quality control inspector for Chrysler, 65-year-old Walling was keen on returning to the Caribbean nation. In the days following his arrival, a series of Facebook posts reflected how much he enjoyed his vacation. One of them read, "11 days in Jamaica and I am healed. I have no pain." Unfortunately, his trip would end in tragedy. In March, Walling's body was found in his room at the 3-star Hotel Gloriana in Montego Bay. Walling was stabbed to death, and various items had been taken from his room, including a laptop. The retiree, whom his adult son had described as friendly and too trusting of people, had been murdered in a part of the city known as the Hip Strip. It was a popular area in which tourists could reportedly safely wander around all night. Walling was last seen going to his room with a man, and there was no sign of forced entry. The authorities believe the murder had been the result of a date gone wrong, or that he'd been targeted for robbery. Walling's family supported the latter theory. In May of 2021, according to Loop Jamaica, the main suspect in Walling's murder was captured. 21-year-old Sonnyman Walker, also known as Shartman, was arrested while trying to flee to Haiti on a boat. Number 4. Murder of Dwayne Jones. One of the most brutal killings to have occurred in Jamaica in recent years was the 2013 mob murder of 16-year-old Dwayne Jones. He was born in a downtown part of Montego Bay and in his early teens was bullied at his high school for his behavior, which was perceived as effeminate. His father severed ties with him when he was only 14, and even reportedly encouraged neighbors to chase him out of the neighborhood. After a period of sleeping on beaches and in bushes, Jones moved into a derelict house alongside two transgender friends, Kiki and Chloe. On July the 21st of 2013, Jones, dressed in women's clothing, attended a party alongside his friends. Jones danced with several men at the party who believed that he was a biological girl. In a 2006 article, Time magazine claimed that Jamaica may be the most homophobic country in the world. Same-sex relations are criminalized, and as such, there are virtually no laws to prevent discrimination or deal with hate crimes. Fearing that he would be discovered, Jones revealed his identity to a girl he knew and with whom he'd been to church. She, in turn, told several men at the party, who accosted Jones outside, demanding to know if he was a man or a woman. Kiki tried to make him walk away, but Jones refused and maintained being a female. Then someone pulled on his bra strap and he ran away. The mob chased Jones down the street and subjected him to horrific acts of violence. He was beaten, stabbed, shot, and run over with a car. He slipped in and out of consciousness for 2 hours before succumbing to a final attack. At 5 a.m., the police arrived at the scene to find his lifeless body dumped in some bushes. Jones's father refused to speak to the media about the brutal attack, and his family declined to claim his body. There were strong reactions to the killing from officials and human rights groups, both within the country and abroad. In spite of the attention it has received, no one has been arrested or charged, and the crime remains unsolved. Number 3. Halford and Florence Anderson. In June of 2018, the charred remains of Halford and Florence Anderson, both in their 70s, were found at the Jamaica home they'd recently purchased. The couple, also known as Charlie and Gail, had left Manchester and retired to Mount Pleasant, Portland, in 2017. Charlie was born in Jamaica, and it had always been his dream to return. After selling their home in the UK, the Andersons placed the proceeds in a bank account, and the money would have reportedly afforded them comfortable living on the island nation. However, in the spring of 2018, the Andersons found that they had been the victims of a credit card scam worth tens of thousands of pounds. For several months, roughly 45 credit card transactions had been made at supermarkets and hardware stores in Portland without their knowledge. In the weeks leading up to their deaths, they'd been forced to return to the UK and secure copies of the transactions made by the fraudster. Satisfied that at least part of the money would be refunded, they returned to Jamaica. Then on June the 22nd, the couple was found dead, and the authorities determined that a petrol bomb had been thrown inside their home. Charlie's body was discovered over 100 feet from the house. After having been set on fire, he was gravely beaten about the head and had a gunshot wound to his hand. Gail's body was also outside the home. She'd also been partially burned and had sustained a fatal gunshot wound to the head. In the horrific incident's aftermath, a man by the name of Sequino Farr, whom the Andersons had hired to do odd jobs around the house, was charged with fraud. However, much to the frustration of their family back in the UK, no one has been arrested for their murder. Today's topic was requested by Yardboy TV. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Timothy Harper. In February of 2019, a Delaware native was gunned down in the resort town of Negril, Jamaica. 43-year-old Timothy Harper, who reportedly had dual US and Jamaican citizenship, had been working as an information technology consultant and living in Westmoreland. He'd moved to the island nation in order to be closer to his young daughters. On February the 16th, at around 9 p.m., he was picking up his wife from work when a gunman approached his vehicle and opened fire. Harper was shot multiple times in the chest and was pronounced dead in a local hospital. No motive has been provided for the killing, and it's unclear if it was a targeted attack. The Jamaica Constabulary Force announced that they detained a suspect on reasonable suspicion of murder, but claimed his identity couldn't be released. Harper's friends urged his family to pressure the US Embassy in Kingston for answers, but no further updates have been made available on the case. It's yet unknown what type of repercussions Harper's killer would face, but Jamaica does enforce capital punishment for aggravated murder, with hanging as the method of execution. Number 1. Desiree Gibbon. In late 2017, New York model Desiree Gibbon arrived in Montego Bay and was staying at a hotel owned by her grandmother. 26-year-old Gibbon reportedly hoped to find work in the country to further her dream of becoming a filmmaker. She had friends and relatives in Jamaica, which was the birthplace of her father. On November the 27th, near midnight, Gibbon told the hotel security guard that she was stepping out and that she'd be returning shortly. Once she walked out of the resort, her loved ones would never see her alive again. 2 days after her disappearance, residents in the town of Anchovy, roughly 4 miles from Montego Bay, discovered her body in a hedge growth. Gibbon had been gruesomely beaten and nearly decapitated by a chopping wound to her neck. Her carotid artery had been severed in the brutal attack and the young woman bled out. She was found fully clothed and caked in her own blood. Gibbon's mother, who was devastated by her passing, believed that she knew her killer or killers and that she'd been the victim of a cold and calculated attack. She reported that Gibbon was extremely cautious when traveling, adding that she would avoid going anywhere alone, particularly at night. Judging by the fact that she was found with limited possessions on her, Gibbon's mother was convinced that she'd been lured away from the hotel by someone she knew and trusted. The authorities launched an investigation which, nearly 4 years later, still hasn't produced any concrete results. Thanks for watching. Be sure to click on one of the links on your screen for more videos.